Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It's Wednesday. Let's take a look at some alts. Going to start with Bitcoin because you need some sort of minimal understanding what's going on with BTC. Really, you just have to make sure that BTC isn't about to fall off a table, much like Legacy, which is reaching the point where we could have a mega reversal. I mean, Nvidia could go down 30% and that would be nothing, right? You know, it could go from 700 to 500. So we really don't want that either. Best case for alts is Bitcoin moves up and then consolidates. Best case for Bitcoin is that Legacy just consolidates here. Looking at the ETFs though, looking at the flows, we've continued to see positive net inflows, which is great over the past, 8 days now. We've also continued to see a decline in GBTC outflows, which is great. So we're all headed in the right direction there. We do have a potential increase in GBTC outflows coming via Genesis sales of GBTC. That's going to be something around, I think the initial slug is like 1.4 billion with the potential for another billion down the road. So it's not quite over yet. I think if our upside is capped for any reason, that would be a reason. We saw what price was like during the outflows before. We haven't yet really seen how price reacts to extremely large net inflow days. We really haven't seen that. You know, I'm talking 500 million plus. We saw a couple days of that, but this was probably some pending initial capital that was earmarked for that, or BTC that was pre-purchased via OTC or something, right? So that would be the counter to we're capped at 46 to 48. Anyway, Bitcoin looks good though. We're continuing to push higher throughout the day. Legacy's continuing to push towards all-time highs. All well and good there. We're starting to see volume perk up a little bit. This pattern may finally be complete. I mean, we should know by Monday at the latest, right? Realistically, Friday, we'll know. But if we continue to hold on to these highs, that's a really good sign for a successful breakout. We'll see if we get to 46 or 48, but at the very least, we have a successful breakout on our hands. Something that'll help this move higher is, of course, any stop losses on the short side that we're triggering. You know, as with any breakout trade, you've got people who have shorts set up with stop losses, most likely right at or near the resistance level, just above the resistance level. That typically helps us go higher. This was just a straddle trade I was talking about yesterday. One way to play this would be to be both long and short. But it's looking more and more that this is leaning increasingly short. So I like 46 to 48 with a maximum of 52 if we get lucky, depending on the flows. We also had some Monero news. It got delisted from Binance. And, ETC can have a 51% attack 15 times. Solana can go down every other week. That doesn't really matter, right? That doesn't really affect price. Fundamentally, it's a big deal, but that hasn't affected price. What always affects price the most is a delisting. And this is, when I say regulatory risk, people may nod their head, say, yeah, whatever. But this is what you're talking about here. This is what you're dealing with. Monero got delisted from Binance because it is the one coin that's actually good at its job. It's great at privacy. It's a great chain from that respect. It's great. It's basically a mixer. It's a giant on-chain mixer. Would I hold coins forever in that? Do I think it's a mega long-term hold? I don't. The technology is still great. The technicals on this are not bullish in the moment. It's bounced quite a bit from the bottom and it can't get delisted from Binance again. So maybe that's the bullish argument. I'm surprised every day that it's still listed on Kraken. I don't know how they get away with it. I imagine the lawyers are fighting that. I don't know. It's the one last US exchange listing. So if Kraken delists Monero, it becomes even harder to buy this in the United States. And the more difficult these things are to access, the less likely they are to see price appreciation. I think that's obvious. Yes, there are DEXs. Yes, there are other ways you can acquire this. You can buy it in the Walmart parking lot. I get it. Okay. But if you're not listed on Coinbase, Kraken, Binance, wherever else, and you're making people jump through hoops to get to this stuff, it just becomes very hard for price to go up. And it didn't really help that this was, this announcement came off of an extremely low volatility period. So there were already probably people, again, talking about a breakout trade. There may have been people who were long with stop losses at like 141, right? And it just cascaded quickly lower. Anyway, so that's Monero. As far as the rest of the alts, just kind of a snooze fest, waiting on really Bitcoin to make up its mind, higher or lower here. Weekly cloud looks fine still, right? This is going to go on till Q4 2024, if not longer. Alts do best post-halving. I'm a broken record on that. So there's no real rush here to 100x some alt on leverage. On the daily, most alts have this setup where they have some sort of head and shoulders type pattern that has either tried to break down or did break down, and now they're trying to regain the cloud, either being back above the cloud or with a bullish TK recross with price above cloud, some variation of that. Any chart that has that is always a go long signal on the daily. If you can muster a bullish TK recross here, even on Bitcoin, it's similar. That is a long signal 10 times out of 10, but we're not quite there yet. A lot of people also talking about Solana and the airdrops and the Solana ecosystem and DEXs and DEX aggregators. So let's just lead with that. We can always go to DeFi Llama and we can look at, where are the TVL inflows going right now? Past week, past month, Solana has seen a big chunk, ETH, a big chunk, Manta, something new, no clue what that is, Pulse Chain, Scam, what else is on this list? Aptos, Mantle, Ronin, Algo. So it's a good place to start to look for things that might have a pulse, right? It's interesting that in the grand scheme of things, Solana actually has very little TVL relative to these other chains. BSC, I don't consider that like a real chain. Neither do I think Tron is necessarily a quote unquote real chain. This is CZ, this is Justin Sun. They're going to play their games, whatever. And then there's ETH, which in the grand scheme of things hasn't seen that much activity recently. Really, it's all been all about Solana, right? So if we focus on Solana a little bit, looking at some of these coins, it's seriously looking at the technicals. Okay, I know none of these have any fundamental value to me. Sorry, they just don't. Meme coins, gambling, I get it. Great, amazing, awesome. On the 12-hour for BONK, this is what I would watch. You can either start accumulating at the lows, which is something I never do. I never like buying weakness. I always like buying strength. I would much rather buy this at some horizontal resistance up here, which is probably going to be the 12-hour cloud entry. You may get a edge-to-edge move here on the 12-hour cloud. That's a great trade, whatever this is, percentage-wise. I wouldn't start accumulating here expecting a move higher because your downside is, considerable. It's quite lower. This entire price action chart pattern mess is reminiscent of head and shoulders, descending triangle, right? So yes, you could start accumulating at some logical diagonal resistance point, but I think your best bet is waiting for a bullish TK cross in the 12-hour, waiting for a move inside the cloud. That makes the most sense to me. So this still leans bearish to me. It doesn't lean bullish quite yet until it can prove itself. So again, if this then that. With that one, I thought I'd pull up Jito because, man, it feels like just yesterday people were talking about this amazing airdrop, right? And anything that's ranging and has limited history is just dead money to me because, yeah, you can trade it from 150 to 2. You can trade this from 180 to 250. You can expect this to go to 10. I get it, but there's kind of no there for me on this one, as there is with most airdrops. Most airdrops I either sell immediately or just hold them for years. Okay, it's not like, oh, I want to trade around this, because you're dealing with a lot of outflows from the airdrop, right? You're just dealing with people constantly sitting on this thing, selling or waiting for a higher price because they didn't sell at this level and selling, or some VC who needs to get out on some unlock who's selling, right? I would much rather wait for all that to be out of the system to pretend to try to trade this. On technicals, it's nothing special, right? Below the 4 hour, I would want to see this probably above 2 before I touch it. But it's just amazing to me, especially over the years, right? You got to, I'm like bearish and angry at alts all the time. I get it. But when you've been here as long as I have and seen the number of junk week in, week out, month in, month out, it's just tiring to want to pretend to care about this stuff. But I would watch it on the 4 hour cloud. This is the latest flavor of the week, flavor of the day, flavor of the month. It's an airdrop. It's a DEX aggregator. I'm going to take a look at all the DEXs. Let's just look, historically, has any DEX coin actually been successful? My answer to that is no, other than BNB, which kind of was a unicorn in some respects, the first of its kind in a lot of ways. But this is Jupiter, and it has the typical airdrop pattern. Just constantly people selling, waiting to sell slightly higher. It's pulled up quite a bit, which is a good sign early here. Ultimately, what I would really want to see on the Jupiter stats, I would want to see activity come back. I would want to see day over day increases in use of the DEX itself, because that is a hint that there are people back at the table trading whatever they're trading on Solana. That doesn't necessarily mean guaranteed price appreciation for the coin, but it does mean there are more people here trading. So on the 1 hour, which isn't much, but on the 1 hour, you may see a breakout here, I don't know, above 59. The problem is your signals on low time frames like this aren't great. You know, you may see some fake out breakout, you may see some breakout that goes nowhere. That's why I always like more history, right? Give me at least 6 months of data to consider here. But yes, in the near term, maybe this goes a little higher. I don't know. If there's a ton of activity back to Solana, sure, right? Maybe this is the next thing everybody rotates into. I don't know. This is Orca, a great example of, I don't know if this was an airdrop or not, but a great example of the type of chart you kind of expect. This was flat for like 2 years and had this psychological level at $1, broke out late last year, along with everything else on Solana, when the activity and the excitement for Solana stuff came back, right? Maybe this is a falling wedge up here, but it doesn't look nearly as bullish as it did at $1, right? And it was up 8x from $1. Not exactly bullish at the moment. This is 1 inch. This is actually an airdrop that I participated in. They airdropped it on Christmas Day, 2020, I think, or like, you know, just the worst day imaginable. I can't remember where I sold it. I should look this up, but I sold it somewhere early here, like after taxes or something. But, you know, again, these things don't typically hold up over time. At least they haven't yet so far. This is 3 years of basically down only. And I get it. It was post-halving, post-whatever, post-blah, blah, blah. This thing may have some crazy 10x run, right? Based on the cloud, this is something else that's worth adding to a watch list. It's accessible through DEXs. It doesn't look horrible in the moment, but if you're holding this from the airdrop or the airdrop highs, that's not where you want to be, right? You want to be accumulating it at a level that makes sense, that people have sort of written this thing off and it's gone through years and years of selling and unlocks already, right? I would much rather trade this than something that's freshly launched. AZERO is another one. Again, post-halving, this stuff does best. You can see the type of accumulation patterns we've seen at the 25-cent level. Adam and Eve, descending broadening wedge, whatever these were at that level, have helped this type of stuff move higher. This has maybe a 4x in it this cycle, but that wouldn't be till probably 6 months from now. But again, kind of dead money unless you're trading around the range, because holding this over time hasn't really helped you a lot. This is one nobody talks about anymore, Paraswap. Again, sideways range, dead money, hasn't really made highs. It's been great on the cloud. You know, the cloud has told you when it's bullish and when it's bearish, but not exactly a great long-term hold. Here it's just kind of neutral ranging. Ray, similar to Orca, you know, look, down only for years and years and years, went flat for a year, broke out when Solana got exciting, kind of ranging around that $1 psychological level. This may still have a 5x in it, right? I don't know. It just really depends on the Solana ecosystem, attention and wealth effect. How much can it pull away from ETH or other L1s? It's done a great job so far. If that continues, sure, I like anything that's Solana, right? That's where the literal hot ball of money is, in Solana. It makes the most sense that anything on Solana, Solana adjacent, is going to do better than anything on ETH or anything on ETH L2s. That just makes more sense to me. It also helps that these have some sort of like unit bias, that they're quote unquote cheap, sub $1, around $1, right? That always helps. Alts do best. Cake, this is Binance Pancake Swap. This did have a nice move in the bull run, arguably, but since then it's been, you know, kind of down only. But again, weekly, kind of similar to 1 inch, looks okay. Looks like it's worth adding to the watch list. Has a decent move here. I don't know, what is this? 3, 4, 5x, whatever it is, through the cloud potentially. Doesn't look terrible, right? But you don't want to sit in this thing for 3 years expecting it to go higher when that just hasn't happened, right? Hasn't happened. So maybe the Jupiter stuff is actually positioned the best it could ever be positioned, because it's pre-halving and you're going to catch this move higher. Completely possible, right? But I think you have to trade around liquidity, Bitcoin halving, quote unquote, alt season, and prepare for that and just sit in it with a plan and have conviction, right? But you don't want to be sitting in this thing as it's been down only for years and years and years. Uniswap, another great example, pretty much down only here for 3 years, consolidated for almost 2 years at these lows, and looks okay on the weekly cloud. Doesn't look terrible. All of DeFi, similar to Monero, right, has this regulatory risk where if the United States government comes down on DeFi with mandatory KYC or geofencing or whatever else, delisting, right, that could send all of these charts much lower easily. So you got to be careful of that. But this looks okay. You know, this is maybe a 3x or something like that. I think there's better charts to trade. But if you're trying to time some sort of low based on the cloud, looks fine. All right, let's talk about ETH. ETH has a bearish TK cross. It has the potential for this head and shoulders type stuff, right? You know, you can kind of see it. Here's the left shoulder, here's the right shoulder, here's the head. It's been flat, it's been boring. Yes, I know ETF's coming. What else can we talk about? Declining volume profile, bearish TK cross. Cloud would prefer a bullish TK cross. That can certainly happen, right? ETH can wake up. I'm not saying it's dead forever, but it's just been better to trade other stuff, especially for retail, especially because of fees. ETH has really kind of been the redheaded stepchild of everybody, right? Nobody's really wanted to trade this thing in a serious way. The price action hasn't been clean, let's say. You know, on the cloud, it's been actually pretty clean. It's held above the Tenkin, held above the Kijun. Still looks okay. You know, I don't want to be a downer on this too much because it will get the last laugh, okay? It definitely will. It's only a matter of time. It's just your opportunity cost and what you'd rather maybe be trading around over waiting for this thing to hit 4K or something, right? Because I know there's a lot of people who are just like, look, bro, just stake and get rich, bro. Restake and get rich, bro. That type of mentality where no one's really using it. And that's when ETH does best, when people are using ETH. The other reason I think ETH isn't doing so hot is because of the ETH beta, the layer 2s. I would rather just trade this, right? This is Lido, Optimism, Arbitrum. You know, these charts move more on a percent basis than ETH, or at least they have. Similar type of setups here. If ETH runs, I'd expect all of these charts to run. There are unlocks here. There are issues with these charts fundamentally, right? Based on circulating supply or whatever else, but they look okay. There's nothing screaming at an entry here, but it looks okay. Optimism found support at the Kijun on the 3-day. Looks okay, right? It already kind of hit its level. It's hard to know, even with this much trading data, you know, where could this really go? I like trading on the layer 2s. I love it. You know, I have no issue with any of these going higher. And I think if we see more activity on the layer 2s, a need for the token itself on a use case basis, yeah, that's going to push the tokens higher. Arbitrum has kind of a head and shoulders setup, at least it did. You know, this will probably get a bearish TK cross. The rest of the market's probably going to bail this out because it looks like the market's moving higher now. But it's just a matter of, you know, what do you want to trade here? There's so many opportunities. What coins do you want to sit in? What coins do you want to accumulate for post-halving? You know, that's up to you as the trader. And there may just be better things to trade around. Solana's setting itself up for a bullish TK recross with price above cloud. And that's enough for a long. The high time frame target's 140, which is the weekly cloud. If this fails to get a bullish TK recross, 73 would be the level. Based on the retail participation, based on effectively UBI, right? Airdrops are effectively UBI. That's really helped keep this thing up and keep this thing afloat. You can kind of see a low time frame inverted head and shoulders in here as well. Shoulder, head, shoulder, neckline somewhere around 100 psychological level again. So that's what I'd watch for on Solana. Also helps that the volume on a lot of this stuff has kind of tapered off to zero, right? That's the type of thing you want to see in a consolidation environment and is suggestive of volatility expansion with any spike in volume. But Solana looks fine. Link looks fine. I don't know if this is necessarily a megaphone. Maybe you could measure it as a megaphone. Not my favorite pattern, but I do like higher highs. On Link, I've seen a lot of on-chain activity suggestive of people accumulating Link, taking it off exchanges. On the other hand, you've got Sergey and team sending millions in Link to exchanges to sell. But this survived the cloud. It had a bullish TK cross recross, right? So all systems go on Link. I think that the upside target is somewhere around 25 on the weekly cloud. SNX, AVE, Comp, some of that Dino DeFi stuff is also going to need ETH to wake up a little bit. These charts don't look terrible, right? It's at the previous horizontal breakout. Trend-wise, it looks okay. Volume's basically gone to zero here. I mean, look at over the years on Binance. If these things don't get regulated to death, I do like them later in the cycle. So it may be a little bit early, but they still look okay. It's above the 3-day cloud. It woke up a little bit today. Not something I necessarily sit in a big way, but definitely worth adding to the watch list. AVAX, again, you're waiting for that bullish TK recross, price above cloud. I don't know how high this goes necessarily. I can't remember the weekly cloud level. Maybe it's around 70, which is kind of a 2x from here. Volume gone to zero, right? So it flipped from turbo bull to neutral, almost bear, remains neutral. That's the official cloud read on this. And you're just waiting for bullish breakout there. DOT on the weekly cloud, I think it's a 5x from here. Again, you can see that head and shoulders that broke down successfully, volume descending to zero, right? You never quite got a bearish volume breakdown, right? You never quite got a selling spike here. But again, in the near term, I would watch for bullish Kumo breakout, bullish TK cross. If you're a longer term accumulator on the weekly, that already looks good enough, I think. At this level, ADA, same thing, right? Broken record, I know. Waiting for bullish TK cross, the price above cloud. That's what the cloud would prefer. On the daily, you can always watch these on the 12-hour, like BONK, if you want, slightly faster signal. But if all of these start to pull up, it'll be pretty obvious that, it's time to jump back in the water, go for a swim. Near is another one on the weekly that looks really good. Someone on the Discord was highlighting that. Volume basically gone to zero since the breakout. 3-day, it looks okay. Alternative layer 1, high issuance. But it looks okay, Not exactly as exciting as a channel break, but over the longer term, looks decently fine. Band, surprisingly, the poor man's link, by the way, is looking to be more and more actionable here. It's got a couple things. It's got an Adam and Eve double bottom. It's got a bullish TK cross in the weekly, and it almost has a bullish entry signal on the weekly cloud. So this is maybe, I don't know, maybe a 5x, maybe a 4x, something like that, conservatively, maybe a 7, 8x if things get exciting. Maybe worth adding to a long-term holding. Something else to watch for would be the 220 horizontal resistance. But this chart actually looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, looks pretty good. When I pulled this one up, I got a little excited on that one. ONDO, I don't know what this is, but looks like it struggled above a quarter. It does have this kind of parabolic nature to it into that resistance level. If it can clear 29.30 cents, which I think would probably be an all-time high at that point, sure. I don't think some of these aren't listed on Coinbase yet. Some of them might not even be listed on Binance yet. I don't actually know about this one, but that's also something to think about if you even have access to this stuff. If it's starting to get bullish and it's not widely listed yet, usually that's a sign that it, pushes higher up until the listing, and then that's your sign to jump out of that if you're trading around the listing. AZERO certainly looks more bearish than everything else. Potentially you've got a inverted head and shoulders set up down here on low time frames at that dollar psychological support, but it's kind of traded pretty clean over the past year, just based on chart patterns, based on the cloud. I would certainly buy a chart pattern at the lows if it can get back to like $1.19. Other than that, you're just waiting for bullish Kumo break up there on the cloud. Super, this is another one that I got kind of excited about because it's got this high and tight flag. I just like actionable tradable setups. I don't like buying weakness, sitting in something forever. Maybe there's even inverted head and shoulders and lower time frames up here. Anything above 70 cents in its go time. You can also see back here there was a mega head and shoulders with a neckline at around this level. So this is already a 10x from lows. I don't realistically know how much more this has in the tank, but as far as a breakout trade, sure. I don't know what this is either, so that doesn't help. But just looking at the technicals, it doesn't look terrible. It looks like it wants to break higher, certainly. Lastly here, Rose coming off of a multi-month channel breaking out of the cloud, holding at the Kijun looks okay. You know, trend wise, I think you're fine. It's just a matter of conviction, time frame. You know, do you want to sit in this thing for the next 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? What's going to convince you to rotate into something else? You know, maybe it's ETH strength or Solana strength relative to something that looks like this. So overall, kind of a mixed bag, kind of just waiting on Bitcoin to break out. It's at 44 now. That should help lift all the alts higher on the L1s. Probably Sol does best, I'd imagine, if it can stay live and not die again. And I would just watch for low time frame TVL activity that hints at some sort of pulse with some of these dexes or bridges or layer 2s, right? You want to fish where the fish are. If the fish are not on Ethereum, you know, if the pond or the lake is clean, is picked clean, and it's waiting to get restocked, just go somewhere else, right? That's all for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.